Doesn't Jaire Alexander just sound like a Minnesota Viking? Feels kind of weird to say, but there are a lot of different ways that we can connect both Alexander and the Minnesota Vikings. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to give a nice little preview for rookie minicamp. And at the end of the show, we're going to have a special announcement regarding the Real Forno Show. So you won't want to miss it. Welcome once again to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show, sponsored by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner. I almost said right, but it hasn't been right in quite some time. And that is producer Dave, who's got a nice little beer. Now I've got my turf mug. If you ever lived in Fargo, North Dakota, you know what mug night is. But mine's just filled with water. We're going to have a little bit of fun tonight. We're going to talk about Minnesota Vikings rookie minicamp, what's really important to kind of watch for, because these are going to be a little bit more normal practices than what we've been seeing in OTAs, and it's going to be 3 consecutive days. One of those is going to be more of a walkthrough. 2 of them will be big boy practices. So get ready, get excited. And we're also going to have a special announcement at the end of the show that you are going to want to pay attention to. Dave, I spent all weekend up north. I kind of have a little bit of raccoon eyes, even though I tried real hard to not wear my sunglasses 24/7 on the lake, but is what it is. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful Monday here in St. Louis.
That's good. That's good. And we're going to have a little bit of fun here today. Let's start talking about the potential of signing Jaire Alexander. Now, on the surface, it's like, oh, another Green Bay Packer? Really? Well, there is somewhat of a pipeline that is built up over the course of the years. And usually those players come over here washed. I still remember when the Vikings signed Billy Lyon. I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 02 or 03. And, he'll be a good rotational guy. And then he was just ass and never played in the league again. Like, Greg Jennings, it felt like a huge deal when the Vikings signed him, but they got rid of him for a reason. He was washed. The only ones that have really been good were Ryan Longwell, who was a good kicker for the Vikings for a little while, including that 09 season, and also Aaron Jones, who the only reason why they cut him was because he wouldn't take a pay cut, and he's just always injured. Well, he was injured all last year, but he played all 17 games. And that's going to come into factor here when we have the Jaire Alexander conversation, because injuries have been a huge problem for him.
There's many more Packers in our history that have come over.
Oh, no. I'm just talking in like recent vintage. When you talk about Jaire Alexander specifically, over the course of the last 4 years, Alexander has not played very much. He has only played in 34 games of a possible 68. That's not a lot. That's not a lot.
Low mileage.
Yeah, low mileage, I guess. It's it's not something I necessarily care about when it comes to a cornerback. I just don't want, it doesn't matter how many miles you have. It's all about how good are you able to play. Like guys like Stephon Gilmore, when they lose their athleticism and they lose that speed, they have so much football IQ and intelligence that it doesn't matter. It doesn't factor in that much. Now, there are times where the speed they can't keep up. It is what it is. But they've got so much else that they can make up for some of that. And we talk about it with running backs, Dave. If you're a 4.3 guy, but it takes you an extra 0.2 seconds to identify the hole to run into, you're a 4.5 guy. So it's one of those kind of deals where if you have the requisite athleticism, it's fine. Just don't be dog shit, for lack of a better term. That's all I ask. Don't be dog shit. And I think Alexander has the potential to be good. Now, is he ever going to be elite? I don't know. But 2 years ago, 2022, he was. He was a second team All-Pro, 5 interceptions, played 16 of the 17 games. I believe the one game he didn't play, and somebody can correct me on that because PFF is not loading like well at all over the last week, has been really annoying. I don't think that game was due to injury. I think they sat him in the final week of the season. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But he has dealt with a lot of injuries. We know of, I think there was an ankle, there was the back. This past one, I think, was a hamstring or a knee. He's had a lot of injuries that have just been brutal. And the best ability is availability.
Including Justin Jeffersonitis.
That is a really funny aspect to this whole conversation. And we'll get into that. But one of the things with the Jeffersonitis, he won't get to avoid him, but he won't face a receiver that's more difficult than Justin Jefferson. Unless, I mean, for a guy like Jaire, maybe AJ Brown is more difficult because he's just this big imposing force to where you just have issues with that. And you know what? Maybe that's a factor here. But I do want to point out that when we're having this Jaire conversation, it's going to be multifaceted. It's going to be layered. It is not going to be as simple as let's just bring him in, because there's a lot of layers that you have to unravel. This is an onion kind of situation, not the Onion, where we're going to see some ludicrous headline, which are very, very funny 90% of the time. But, oh, it's a suspension? Oh, that's right. It was a suspension. Yeah, he's got that kind of alpha personality that can get him in trouble. And that can be good. That can also be bad. So when we have the Jaire Alexander conversation, if he's healthy, you know you're getting a really good cornerback. You know you're getting a guy who can handle number one receivers, getting a guy who can play off, he can play man, he can play press, he can play zone, and he's very, very physical. Not physical, he's very aggressive at attacking the football. Sometimes aggressive and physical usually go hand in hand. Jaire Alexander is a little bit smaller. He's like 5'11", 190 pounds. He also played at Louisville. Dave, sounds like a couple cornerbacks I've loved over the last couple of years. I love those Louisville corners who are just small and feisty as hell. So maybe this is my Quincy Riley. Who knows? But when you look at Alexander's profile, it fits what Brian Flores likes. He likes guys who are very aggressive at attacking the football. He likes guys who can play in multiple ways, especially in man coverage. Man coverage has always been a big pillar of what Flores wants to do. What's been really unique about the defenses he's run in Minnesota is they haven't been man coverage focused. My personal opinion on that, they haven't been man coverage focused because he hasn't had the dudes to do it. And they have spent off seasons focusing on fixing other things, because Brian Flores, from my perspective, is like, I can make it work. You made it work in 23, made it work in 24 with the number 5 defense in the National Football League, despite not having great cornerback play, and only one guy you could really trust to play man coverage. And now you have this group in 2025 where, okay, I think I have 3 guys who I think can play man coverage, but I have questions about 2 of them. And that's not even including Jeff Okudah, who, let's be real, he signed a fully guaranteed contract, but it's like $2.6 million. So that really doesn't matter. He's just a depth guy. And if you get more out of him, great. If you don't, you signed a depth guy for like $2.6 million. Who cares? But they believe in Mekhi Blackmon, and they love Isaiah Rodgers. And I'll be honest, I love Isaiah Rodgers too. But when you bring in guys who you're projecting highly that are unproven, you have a risk there. And that added variable makes things a little more difficult. That's why teams continue to link the Vikings to Jalen Ramsey. That's why teams are linking the Vikings to Jaire Alexander. Those elements are always going to stay at play here. And when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings, let me tell you, they could use him. Now, there are multiple factors, and we'll talk about some of those here in a minute. But will it make sense from a financial perspective? I don't know.
Hey, now keep in mind, just about every team is talking about Jaire Alexander today, except for the Packers.
Mm-hmm. And the Packers will save about $17 million in cap space. And I've seen a couple Packers writers talk about Trey Hendrickson, which, let me tell you, I like that the Packers have bad pass rushers right now. That warms my heart that their pass rushers are not very good. Now, Rashawn Gary has been good. He was bad last year. Lucas Van Ness, did not like him coming out of college. Had a low second-round grade on him. Packers took him 13th. But in fairness, it's the Packers. They take those guys and make those guys real good all the time. But he's been bad. And that's a little mini victory lap for me. I feel good about that one. It's been nice to have the Packers with poor pass rushers. And even in the middle, Kenny Clark is now finally the age of 30. That dude came into the league. It feels like he came into the league at 16. He was actually 2021. But still, he's been so young and been young throughout the entirety of his career. When you look at the Packers, they could do a lot of things with that money, but not having Alexander, that cornerback room is like decimated. It's worse than the Vikings. It's brutal. But they got rid of him for a reason. The injuries, that's a big, big factor here.
That can't be all the reasons.
No, but I guarantee you that Alexander wasn't willing to take enough of a pay cut for the Packers to keep him. They also wanted to keep him, but they knew that they weren't going to keep him at that price. So you cut that. He had no guaranteed money left. So you cut tabs now. You split the cap hit over 2 years, and you save a ton of cash. Now they have dead cap hits, but they're going to save like $36 million in cash paid over the next 2 years, which a lot of that can go to other players. But you only play 4 games in 21 and then 7 games in 23 and 24. That's a really brutal sell to any organization. Except the Minnesota Vikings. Why? They love paying injured players. They love signing them because they believe it's their market advantage. It's where they can find these, what's the right word for it? They can find these advantages, these edges. They can take advantage of it, market inefficiency. Where, okay, if a guy is worth $15 million, but he's been hurt a bunch, well, then maybe I can get him for 10, and I can trust my medical staff to keep that guy healthy. And guess what? He'll play like he's making $15 million a year. Guess what they did with Andrew Van Ginkel? Just that. 2 years, $20 million deal, and then they extended him for 1 year and another $23 million. So that 2-year, $20 million deal essentially became a 3-year, $43 million deal. So his average annual value went from 10 to 14.3. Now, he played better than that number, but he had never played that well before, so he got a well-deserved raise. But he also doesn't have the track record nor the age to warrant a much bigger type of extension. But that shows you the Vikings have this track record of maximizing these players and figuring out a way for them to stay healthy. Jonathan Grenard had a history his first 3 years, consistently injured. Breakout his final year in Houston. They sign him, keep him healthy. That's the best year of his career. Blake Cashman, always hurt. Was out for 3 games instead of like 12, which is what happened with the Jets his first couple of years because they made him a 5th-round pick. And guess what? The Vikings kept him mostly healthy. Aaron Jones, too. They keep making these bets on players who have been often injured, and it keeps paying off because they are good at keeping players healthy with this training staff. Now, we've seen other training staffs, most notably the Los Angeles Chargers, be just dumpster fires and everything happens. The only reason Justin Herbert got his first start is because their team doctor punctured the lung of the starting quarterback.
Is that true by Dalton? If we sign him, we'd get a 3rd-round comp pick?
Sign Jaire? No.
Only if we signed him and he departed after a year.
Yeah.
And then got a big salary.
Yeah. So if you sign him to a 1-year deal, you let him go, and then he signs for like a $25 million a year contract, which, considering he'll be 29, I don't think he'd quite get that much. But then you could potentially get a big, like a 3rd-round pick out of it, but it'd probably be a 4. And that's if that was the path that you chose. So there is merit to saying, hey, maybe we bring him in for a comp pick, but with your salary cap situation the way it is next year, and it's not a disaster, it needs work. Like, people will look at the numbers like, oh my gosh, 53 million over the cap. That really doesn't matter. You're just going to push a ton of money in the future. All you do is restructure Darrisaw and Justin Jefferson. And guess what? That's 40 of it right there. So they have a lot of things they can do, and they're obviously committed to this 3-year window with McCarthy. And that's a smart bet. Maximize that rookie window and give yourself the best opportunity roster-wise to win a Super Bowl, and then have your, what do you call it? And then have your rookie quarterback elevate and continue to grow. But you also have a roster that's quarterback proof. So these are the types of moves that you can make. And he's an injured guy. So how much is he going to be able to get on the open market? Now, you can talk about like more than half the teams have like $20+ million in salary cap space. But Dave, we've talked about it. That's not real salary cap space. $5 million is going to the practice squad. You have to side at least $5 million. Some teams set aside more than $5 million for in-season signings. And we're not talking like big time in-season signings. We're talking, hey, your offensive tackle is out for the year. You got to sign a veteran free agent. That's $1.1 million prorated. That hits your salary cap. So if it's the full $1.1 million, you have to have that ready. And maybe that guy won't sign for $1.1 million. Maybe it's $5 million prorated. That's what guys like Jason Peters have done in the past. You have to have that ready and available. That matters. That's why you, even though, as Freddie mentions, it's about $18 million in salary cap space that the Vikings currently have, you have to have money set aside for things that aren't accounted for yet. So even though teams have $20 million, that doesn't mean they could just give him a $20 million contract and absorb the entire cap hit now. A little more complicated than that. Whoever signs him is probably going to take, I'd say, between a $5 to $10 million cap hit this year. The Vikings have the room to absorb that. My read on the Garrett Bradbury deal, where they gave him the post-June 1st designation, was I think that they were intentionally pushing that money out to the summer so they didn't spend it. Almost like I want to be responsible with my money, so I'm going to put it in a savings account or like a trust fund. Like, I guess for kids who aren't super rich, that would be like a CD. You put in a 12-month CD, you can't touch that for a year, but you're going to get a good return on it. So the Vikings, I think that's what they did with Bradbury. They did not want to spend that money. So what did they do? They pushed it off. And by pushing it off, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in what you can utilize later. Now, they could have just absorbed it and gotten the whole cap space right away. Sure. But you know what? It might have been smarter business to do it that way. So you can keep yourself under control a little bit, because let's be real. We can always have good intentions. And Dave, you probably know this a lot more than me considering your life experience. But if you have the money, a lot of times you're going to be more willing to spend it because you have it versus not having it. And that's my theory. Maybe it's a little misguided. Maybe it's completely wrong. But why else would the Vikings end up post June 1st in Garrett Bradbury? It's either for something like this or to push it forward into 2026. That's my take on it. And that's where things get really interesting with Jaire, because now let's get into that conversation, Dave. From your perspective, What do you pay him? What do you pay Jaire? What is he worth? He's coming off a 4-year, $84 million deal that he signed. That was his big extension. It was the top dollar amount for cornerbacks for a little bit. Now $21 million is $9 million behind the top guy, $4 million behind the second guy. The Texans paid Derek Stingley Jr. a lot more than J.C. Horn was paid. So what do you pay him?
Well, first off, I want to acknowledge the folks watching. They are all my favorite peoples, and they are here, and they're expressing their thoughts on Jaire Alexander, and it's absolutely fantastic. But before I answer what would I pay him, tell me why Jaire would want to sign with Minnesota versus any other team in the league.
Multiple reasons. So let's start at the top. Brian Flores' defense. Guys want to play in this defense. Why do they want to play in this defense, Dave? It's gonna maximize what Jaire can do at corner. He's going to be put in a high-profile spot. And he doesn't always have to be the guy. So he doesn't have to be the guy that just follows the number one around. He can be. He's got the skill set to do it. But you have that little bit of pressure taken off of you because of the presence of Byron Murphy Jr. The second is because he's petty. Jaire Alexander, you watch him play, he's a petty dude, man. And I don't mean that as an insult. He's going to want to play the Packers. There are only 3 spots where you can play them twice guaranteed. And one of them is Minnesota. What is more petty than going to Minnesota and sticking it to them? I think it would be more petty than going to Detroit because there isn't that rivalry in the same way as Minnesota. You could argue going to Chicago is more petty because their rivalry is arguably stronger than the Vikings and Packers. But it's the third element that would really sell him on coming here.
Chance of the ring. Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl. This team is primed to make a Super Bowl run. Can they do it? We'll know in a few years, and we'll be able to answer that question. This team is
hopefully know in February.
Oh, I know, right? This team is structured heavily to make a Super Bowl run. Structured heavily. So, can they actually succeed? We'll find out. But let me tell you, you get a guy like Jaire Alexander in here, and you can easily sell him on, hey, you're the missing piece. You come in here, you give us stability and high-level play at cornerback opposite Byron Murphy Jr., and we can win a Super Bowl. That is an easy, logical sell that can make things work, and it can make it happen. I would be thrilled to see that.
Okay, now for cost, Jason wrote just a little bit ago, ESPN expects him to get a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. I could deal with that, especially knowing that there'll probably be 1 or 2 void years on the top of that, and he'd basically make minimum. He is going to get some guaranteed money out of Green Bay, as I looked at his contract. So he's making more than that. But you're adding to a cornerback room that, like a lot of our listeners have discussed, is pretty well stacked with people that can turn up and be good. We'll find out. Now he's 28, which should be the prime of a cornerback before they start to go off the cliff. And we don't know how he is for that. Is he losing speed or something like that? Mm-hmm. Obviously, we talked about his low mileage. But if he is willing to play here for like 4.5 on a 1-year deal, I'm cool with that. Add him to the room. Have him compete. See if he does it. Now, I do worry about the locker room cancer. Now, I knew he was disgruntled over not wanting to take a pay cut. I understand that. But if he brings, remember, the Vikings have been assembled. Specifically, they look at personalities and who will fit. And if they check him out and say, nope, I'm cool with that too. Sarah, thank you so very much for the super chat. You write, Jaire needs to come with an entrepreneur or interpreter. I can't understand a word he says. Well, that's quite possible.
Well, he's not as bad as Xavier Legette, but he does have a little bit of that southern twang in his voice, if I recall correctly. Which, yeah, I can understand how the vernacular can get mixed up. But I'll tell you that gave me a big laugh.
But thanks again, Sarah. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. So I want to address what I think it was with Jason that said that ESPN had 1 year, $4.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be real. I think he gets double that. I think not all of it will be fully guaranteed. It'll be like 1 year, 10 million, 6 million is fully guaranteed, 4 million in incentives, probably like $2 million in per game roster bonuses, where if he suits up on game day, he gets the money. And that's a way for one, only the first 7 would count toward the salary cap initially because he only played in 7 games. But it would be a way for the team to not have to fully pay out all that money because, well, he didn't play. And if you don't play, that's a really big deal. But if you don't play, then you don't pay. You're still guaranteeing some money, but you're saying, hey, if you stay healthy, I'll give you more, and I'll be glad to do it. The Vikings did this with Zadarius Smith. I believe his roster bonuses were somewhere in the $2 million ballpark because he barely played the year before. I think he played 1 game because of a bad back injury. Like, it's an easy way to not skirt around the salary cap, but to potentially save you money if they don't play. And it's like, hey, all you have to do is suit up and you get like, it would be like $115,000 just by walking on the field, an extra $115,000. So
did they set up Marcus Davenport's contract that way?
No, I don't believe so. I believe Marcus Davenport's contract was more signing bonus that was split up. Let me pull up Marcus Davenport's deal because, like, I have Jaire's pulled up right now. Like, he was set to have a salary cap hit of $24.6 million this year. That's a lot of money for a guy who's not playing football.
And it goes up next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So his Vikings deal, he did have $2 million in per game roster bonuses. So I stand corrected. He did do that, but he also had, let's see, a lot of money. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out 17 times 5. So $8.5 million in like signing bonus. Well, so like that's a significant amount of money too. And I think that would be the way you could make it work financially. The Vikings can do whatever they want. Like, if they want to give him like a longer term deal, like 3 years, 45 million or something like that, like they could do it. It would take a little bit of gymnastics to make it work, but they can do that. My bet is Jaire takes a deal from a team where he could prove that he's still an elite corner with a team that he can do a lot of really good things for. And to me, that's the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, but how does that impact like Jaire Alexander and Mekhi Blackmon and their whole, how they all fit?
I think you can make them all fit because, so Isaiah Rodgers isn't a guy you throw into the slot. He's small, but he's not a slot corner. He doesn't play.
We got Murphy for that.
I know. Well, let me finish. I'm kind of extrapolating everything here. So Jaire can kick inside of the slot. Byron Murphy can kick inside of the slot. Mekhi Blackmon can kick inside of the slot. And if you feel comfortable, like legitimately comfortable playing 4 guys, you can give guys breaks. You can, hey, Byron Murphy, we're going to give you the series off because we're humming right now. Our defensive line's getting a lot of pressure, and we want to take the mileage off of your legs. Like, you can do some of that stuff. Blackmon is hard to count on completely because he's coming off of a torn ACL, and he played okay as a rookie 3rd-round pick. Isaiah Rodgers, I'm high on him. So is the team, but he's also on a very minimal deal. So I think it would be one of those instances where, hey, you're good, but I got a great player. It's the Chester Taylor, Adrian Peterson conundrum. Don't say no to a potentially great player because you have a good one. And if you sign Jaire Alexander, that would be
great.
Well, he was at one point the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League in a consensus top 5 corner. So if he gets up back to where he was pre-injury, I think you can call him great. I've always thought he was a little overrated, but from a consensus standpoint, that's how he's viewed. When he's healthy, he's a great player. So if he can get close to that, let's say he gets to 90% of it. Let's say he sniffs the Pro Bowl, but he doesn't make it. You're pretty happy with that because you don't need cornerbacks to be elite. You need them to be really good. You need them to be solid. Plus, you're pairing it with a great pass rush, and that's what the Vikings do have. They have a great pass rush. And if you get that interior pressure, which was not there last year, that can make your cornerbacks' lives a lot easier. So there's a lot of elements to the whole conversation. But I think Alexander coming here would make a lot of sense. I also think it would make sense. It makes sense from a financial standpoint because the Vikings can give him like a 1-year deal worth like about $10 million, which is what I think he'll end up getting. But you know what? Maybe there's something to that 4.5. I would have to go seek it out and figure out where that came from. Did it come from insiders? Did it come from people speculating? Like, what the context of it, I think, would tell us a lot more, because if they say, well, his market's going to be low, people will want him, but they won't want to give him any money, then that changes the whole paradigm of what could end up happening with Jaire. And in that case, he's going to want to go to the far and away the best situation, because if nobody's offering really good money, it's about maximizing what next year's dollar can be. And then I think the second thing is, if you do bring him in, how quickly can you get him up to speed? Which, he's a veteran. I'm sure you can get him up to speed relatively quick. You got Stephon Gilmore up to speed relatively quick last year when he signed in August. So looking at it, if you bring him in, I think it'd be a net positive. Hopefully the money is right. I would still think 1 year, $10 million makes a lot of sense from every standpoint, because you have to entice him enough to bring him in. Because as you said, Dave, like, every team is going to be looking, do we want to bring in Jaire? And there are teams like the Baltimore Ravens could really use him. Like, you could argue that the Lions might want to make a play for him. What about the Cowboys? Like, there are a lot of teams, or one that I talked about with a buddy earlier today, the Eagles. They don't have Darius Slay or James Bradbury anymore. Then they also lost Isaiah Rodgers. So that could be a team to look at for Jaire. So is it the best idea to bring him in? I'm not going to tell you that it's the best idea, but I also think it's a good idea considering where the room is at. And you know what? Even if Jaire is just average, it gives you at least a better sense of confidence in the room going into the year, because there are a lot of variables with this cornerback room right now. Jared asked about Okuda's whole contract. So they did guarantee it, but it's also like a very small contract. So it really doesn't matter that much. Like, I'm pulling up Jeff Okuda right now. It's a 1 year, $2.35 million contract. It's fully guaranteed. The base salary is the minimum, $1.17 million. Signing bonus is $1.18. It's fully guaranteed, meaning they expect him to make the team and they expect him to play. But you can give that money to cornerback 4. If you get more out of it, that's great. They didn't pay him that money because they expect him to start. And I'm guessing, Jared, that is the basis of your question. They're not paying him starter money. They're paying him to be a quality depth player, which he's got the talent and ability to be a quality depth guy. He's also a lot of injuries, more than arguably anybody else on this Vikings roster. That's why, as a former third overall pick, he's considered a bust. But I think Jaire would be a smart move to bring in at the right price. Will they do it? Who knows? We'll see. We will see.
Well, it's been a good discussion, and we will track it as he moves around, probably visiting teams and news comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we have tomorrow?
MiniCamp, mandatory MiniCamp. And it's very interesting to kind of take a look at from a big picture perspective. And these are, I've got 4 things that I'm really wanting to keep an eye out. One of them is corner. We talked about that extensively. How confident are they in that room? If they just stink all weekend, the Vikings are going to be way more apt to go aggressive for Jaire Alexander, go aggressive for a Jalen Ramsey, or maybe somebody else that we haven't even discussed. Because MiniCamp gives you the closest thing before training camp about, like, to tell you what this group can be. Because it's relatively, what's the right word? It's relatively normal practices. That matters. Matters a lot. So that's going to be a big thing. And what that room looks like is going to be very, very interesting. But the one thing that I'm really looking forward to, and I'm hoping we get more video than we did of OTAs, JJ McCarthy's mechanics, his command. I know he can throw the ball. I know he was a good prospect at quarterback, but I want to see how he handles things at the line of scrimmage. I want to see how he handles things from a mechanical standpoint. One of the big things coming out was he would like, you know, when you bowl and you kick your leg out, like your back leg out real wide. Well, he would do that. It was almost like a pitcher where you have that heavy leg kick. That would cause the ball to be a little inaccurate. That would cause the ball to do a lot of different things. So that is tightened up
for that on the highlights, and it's, at least on the highlights, it's much calmed down from where he was a year ago.
I want to see how it looks from a consistency standpoint. And I've talked about it many times. It's the thing I remember when Tim Tebow was coming out. 10,000 reps to make it a habit, to make it just second nature. So where are we at with some of that stuff? Where are we at with how he generates power with his hips? Where are we at with how he stands in the shotgun? Because remember, at Michigan, he was flat-footed because they would do a lot of RPO stuff, and he'd be able to flip those hips real quick and be able to make things work. But in the NFL, it's different. You're not doing a lot of RPO stuff. I'm sure the Vikings will do some, but you're doing more, hey, we want to run this offense like this, so we're going to have you with 1 foot forward at all times. That can be a hard transition. So what does that look like consistently? When he's at the line of scrimmage, how is he looking at coverages? How is he handling the pre-snap stuff? Is he communicating well? How does all that look? Because we won't be able to get a full diagnostic in minicamp or even training camp. But if you can do it now, you can do it later. So that matters. I just want to see it. I think it's just going to show that he's still on the right track. And we're not going to have issues with it. So we'll see. We'll see. Couple more points, and then we've got our big announcement. Dallas Turner, what's his progression look like? I'm probably going to write about it tonight or tomorrow. I think people are panicking about Dallas Turner, and it's misguided, for lack of a better term. Oh, he only played 310 snaps. Oh, he played less than Pat Jones and Jihad Ward. But I think the context was necessary. He was not ready or capable of playing the Jihad Ward role or the Pat Jones role. He needed a year to really bulk up and get that NFL caliber strength. Now he might be able to do the Pat Jones stuff because he's had a full year. And maybe not, because he was more of a slender guy, more of a speed. And he's not a speed to power by. He's a speed to leverage guy. Like when you watch Jared Verse and how he attacks, he will drive you off the ball with sheer power. He doesn't have to have the best leverage. Dallas Turner uses speed to power, but what he does is he gets more leverage. So he's getting under those armpits, pushing them up. And he's not using a lot of power, but he's using basic physics to his advantage. Speed to power guys use physics too, but there's different levels. So it's like somebody using like a hammer to put in a nail versus a nail gun. They both get the job done, but one is a better version. And right now, Turner is more of a speed to leverage guy. And how does that look? Can he generate more power now that he has had an entire offseason to kind of bulk up, to get NFL ready? Because Alabama is basically like a 33rd NFL team, but it's different in college than it is versus the pros, especially because now you don't have to go to class. So how does all that look? I'm going to be really intrigued. I think he's in a much better place than most people do because he took a lot of steps last year. And yes, Daniel, I do look like more like TJ Hawkinson every week, except Hawkinson wishes his face was this nice. Last thing, there's a lot of other things, but the Vikings don't have a ton of position battles. I want to see if Tai Felton can push Jalen Nailor for his job. And I think we're going to find out real quick if it's even a discussion. I think we're going to find out this week. And I'm not saying that Felton will even get his job this year. But I think we're going to find out real quick if it will even be any semblance of a competition come training camp at any point.
I want to see Tai Felton play at this level.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. And because he's a rookie, Dave, we just have so many questions we don't have answers to. And Nailor has been just inconsistent. But we got a bunch of he's in the best shape of his life quotes. His body's built like Debo. The change to number 1. His muscles are popping more. There is something to the number making the player look better. Like, that's legit.
Yeah, especially with linemen and people that wear 80s. You want a big number for big people.
I'll have to go find it, but I think it was UCLA did a study on that. And they proved that the number makes a psychological impact on how you view the player. So that's something to monitor. Remember Ryan Wright was 66 as a punter? I didn't want that to go away. I loved it. I thought it ruled. But of course, no fun league. But he's obviously bulked up and got his body into better shape. What is that going to look like on the field? Because if you get all that kind of muscle, how does that impact your quickness and speed? Because they do. Some guys, it impacts them a lot less. Some guys, it impacts them a lot. So what does he look like? Felton, I think we've talked about him. I think he's stiff in the hips. I think he struggles in and out of breaks. I don't think he can do a lot of the things that Addison and Jefferson can do. Nailor's a lot better at those things. So where is his progression? Where is Nailor's progression? I think we're going to learn if Nailor has any chance of even making this a competition this week. My lean is no, because he's just so stiff in the hips. My comparison to him, Dave, I don't know if I've told you this, was the Tin Man before he got oil in his joints from the Wizard of Oz. He needs oil in those joints bad. And
for Tai Felton.
Oh, yeah. I'm not the biggest Nailor fan, but he's a solid wide receiver 3. But if you're Nailor, you just got to beat out Felton. Felton, if he performs better than Nailor, he'll just get the job. I have nothing to believe he's going to do that.
Well,
we'll find out.
Plus Nailor's, this is 3rd year, 4th year?
4th, so he'll be a free agent after the year.
In the wide receiver room we have, and it's generated some very, very good wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. And Keenan McCardle's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be interested to see what he has in store for him, because I genuinely question if he can run a full route tree in any semblance of what Jefferson and Addison do. But we'll see, because sometimes coaching is just so significantly different college to pro. Maybe they know how to unlock him, and we'll see. But I'm very skeptical, and we're going to find out a lot about Felton, I think, this week. especially because Rondale Moore is probably going to miss mandatory minicamp from an on-field perspective because he's still healing from the torn ACL. Because it wasn't just an ACL. It was a pretty rough injury for him. But, Dave, that's what I'm looking forward to. What are you looking forward to before we wrap up?
Oh, Judd had a quick short today where he was talking about looking at the backup defensive linemen. And I agree with him. If Flores is going to run what they're nicknaming a wave defense, where it's just wave after wave after wave of defenders coming at you and playing, keeping the troops fresh, if you want to do that. And that's why reserves come up and people fall back in the military. If he's going to do that, who are going to be those second-tier defensive linemen that step up? Is it going to be LDR? Is it going to be Taki Taimani? Who is it that's going to earn more playing time and go, oh, yeah, baby, we're glad they're in as well? And that's going to be fun to watch. And besides that, I want to take a look at the tight ends. I haven't seen much of them, whether it be Bartholomew or Urasek or whomever.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. And speaking of, our big announcement is not the biggest, but we're going to be live on Thursday, not Wednesday this week. Why Thursday? Minicamp ends on Thursday, so we're going to wrap it up. We're going to talk about all the storylines coming out of TCO Performance Center, and that way you have a better sense of everything that is going on. And it'll be exciting. I'm really excited to talk about it. I'm excited. Thursdays are probably going to be the new home for the show. When that becomes official, if it does, we will let you know. But I'm excited to see what ends up coming from this mandatory minicamp, because there's a lot of things to look at, especially the quarterback. How does everything look? Can they stay healthy coming out of it? Hopefully they do. And we'll have a lot more.
It sounds great. You're going to take Thursday. Sal wanted it, but Sal is still on her sabbatical. And if you want Sal and miss Sal like we do greatly, please message her and tell her we miss her presence on the channel. We'd want her back and excited about this season. Absolutely. It's going to be fun. Yeah. And in case you missed it, I did my second FFSN NFL football show yesterday. Should have hit your feed this morning. I was talking with Jess Place from the something Mile High Broncos, blah, blah, blah. And we talked about the NFL and how Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers. First off, how we will defeat him 2 years in a row overseas, and how he will probably end up getting another coach fired.
Yeah. I'm really excited to kind of see how this all plays out. I'm excited to give that a listen. Extra cool that we have it on our feed as well to make it easier for the listeners on the podcast side to be able to find it. If you're on the YouTube side, go subscribe to the podcast on all of your favorite aggregators. And if you're on the podcast side, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a lot of fun. You get to see this beautiful hair and Dave's beautiful beard.
And the great graphics we had yesterday on Two Old Bloggers as we saluted the captain, Jim Marshall.
True that. Go check that out. That's going to have a lot of really interesting stuff on Jim Marshall that I just don't have because of my experience with the Minnesota Vikings, and Dave and Darren have a much, much better experience. We'll end on this because Freddie asked a question. Scale 1 to 10, how confident am I in Isaiah Rodgers? 6. Like, he still has to prove it. And we talked about that with McCarthy last week. He has to prove it. I believe he can do it, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know he's going to do it. I believe. I can't say with certainty. And I think that's the same for Rodgers on a different scale. I think Rodgers is going to be a solid cornerback too. And if he becomes a solid cornerback too, you got him at a bargain. And that's how you build the Super Bowl roster. You get value at positions like that. But we'll be back Thursday night live at 6:05. God, I love that we go at 6:05. It just makes my wrestling heart so happy. If only we could call this the Superstation, but we're not TBS. So thank you once again, everybody. From Dave, from Forno, SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!